My workplace gay romance story. I was 22 years old when I started working as a dishwasher in the kitchen at a nursing home. One day, my boss came up to me to tell me that a new worker will be joining me as a co-dishwasher. I didn't think much of it at the time, as workers came and went constantly. I wasn't prepared for the new person that came through the door. In steps this 24'6'6", muscular Vietnamese man with chocolate eyes, wavy black hair with blue streaks, and the brightest smile that I've ever seen on a person. Let's call him Zane, by the way. Let me tell you, he was so freaking hot that I failed to remember my name when it was time to introduce myself. We worked together for the first 6 months and surprisingly got along pretty well. We focused our minds on the job and spoke only when necessary. Despite this, I took advantage of our time that we had together. I often found myself checking him out every chance I got and trying to start a random conversation in order to get to know him better. Zane for sure made me question my sexual and romantic orientation. I consider myself bisexual, having had relationships with women, but I never thought about fucking or even having romantic thoughts about another man. I think the first breakthrough I had been during one of our weekend shifts. I was mopping the floor around my area so that I could take a break and go home. When Zane steps out of the bathroom shirtless, like a schoolgirl eyeing her crush, I gawked at how hot his body was, including his gorgeous six-pack, which you could probably eat breakfast off of. Anyway, I could see him leaving and wanted to say goodbye. As I took a step forward, I forgot about the wet floor and fell face first on the tiles. Luckily, Zane heard me hit the floor and tried to assist me. He didn't get that far though, as he also slipped and landed mere inches away from me. As we caught a glimpse of each other's faces, we smiled before bursting out into hysterical laughter. After that, for the next year or so, our relationship changed heavily. Zane and I became really close, so close that our coworkers gave us the nickname Harley and Ivy. We spent our free time hanging out, going to the movies, anime conventions, and even went on every vacation together. Zane also would make these jokes about how great a little wifey I would make and how he wanted to fuck me. I played along because he said he was straight and the jokes were just jokes, but secretly, I wished I could be his spouse. The day we truly became a couple was when we went to an amusement park during the summer. Coming back, his car got a flat tire, and we were forced to stay put until a tow truck arrived. Zane suggested we pass the time by watching some anime in the back seat. Ironically, we ended up watching this show about pure same-gender love. While watching the show, there was a moment when the characters were having a discussion about living together. Zane turns to me and says, "That could be us, you know, all happy and shit." I tell him I thought he was straight, and he replies to me by saying, "Well, since I met you, I don't know anymore." After that, he shocked me by bringing me into our first kiss, and he told me that he loved me. I felt the same and gladly returned the emotion, establishing our relationship. The first weekend of us being officially boyfriends was probably the best memory I have of our relationship. I ran into my ex-girlfriend when I was at the mall shopping. Even though we had broken up, we remained good friends and she was excited for me when I told her that I met someone else. With that being said, she invited me to come by a nightclub she was working at, called Vinyl. I knew of Vinyl as it was the local LGBT club of which I heard good stories. I mentioned it to Zane and he agreed we should try it. So that weekend we went. I still remember the first time we walked into the nightclub holding hands. It was our first experience in a LGBT-friendly setting, and we tried to feel at home as much as possible. We drank, made out for most of the night, and watched the drag show that the bar had been having that night. At one point, the drag entertainers opened up the floor for a small competition. Singles and couples were invited. You'd have to pick a song, lip sync, dance, and most importantly, have a great time. Zane suggested that we go out there and put on a show for the audience, but I was shy and didn't feel comfortable going out in front of all those people. At one point, Zane excuses himself and returns later, telling me that he has a perfect plan to help me get over my shyness. Before I could ask him what he meant, the DJ started playing Kill the Lights by Alex Newell, one of our favorite songs. I'm also baffled when Zane suddenly picks me up and carries me down to the dance floor. He puts me down when we reach the dance floor and starts dancing while lip-syncing to the song. At first, I'm frozen with fear having so many eyes on me, but Zane grabs my hand and just starts to guide me through the music. Looking at his goofy dances with his eyes on me helps me get over my fear. Soon, I started dancing and lip-syncing, doing my best to enjoy the moment. We must have gone through 5 songs on that dance floor and I enjoyed every part of it. It didn't even matter that there was an audience watching. As long as I could look into his eyes and love him, nothing else mattered. When we left the bar, Zane was still in a festive mood and decided that we should keep the fun going. I drove us to a vacant spot near the woods, and we spent a while just talking and reminiscing about how much fun we just had. At one point, he looks me dead in the face and asks me if we could possibly take our relationship to the next level. Without hesitation, I said yes, and before I knew it, we were having sex on the hood of his car for a good chunk of the evening. When we were done, we didn't even bother to go home. We just fell asleep in the car with the heat blaring. The next year remained the same fun adventure. Since we made the relationship official, we grew closer with every outing. One of the best parts of our relationship was knowing that we changed each other for the better. Granted, we did have the occasional fights like couples do, but we always got over it and managed to improve. It got to a point where we started to take things in a more serious direction. After sex one time, he started to question me about whether I wanted kids or not. Having that conversation told me we were meant to be together, and eventually we tried to make it a reality by asking my sister to be a surrogate for us. I think our relationship started to go downhill when we planned to tell our parents about how serious we were. Telling his mom we were a couple wasn't an issue as she was happy for us. She even agreed to pay a year on an apartment if we wanted to move in together. Telling my mom was a different story, however. We tried having dinner with her one night in order to break the news, but it didn't go as planned. Me coming out of my mom was interrupted by her bringing home a dinner guest. She brought home this beautiful girl named Alexis. This was weird to me as I had never met this girl before and wondered why my mom invited her. Dinner, to say the least, was awkward because my mom kept playing matchmaker for both of us, trying to get one of us to be more interested in Alexis. To make matters worse, my mom had slipped in subtle hints about how bad same-gender relationships were and how she would never accept them. While Alexis was really beautiful and a nice girl, it bothered me that my mom was constantly inviting her places where me and Zane would be at. To give you an example, we went to a friend's pool party one summer. My mom had begged me to take Alexis with her and show her a good time because she didn't have many friends. While I didn't want to, I tried to make my mom happy and tolerate her presence. At the party, Alexis became annoying to us, to say the least. She seemed to be following us around, keeping us from really having any privacy. I remember at one point when Zane walked away to use the bathroom, she came close to me and tried to talk to me. Her whole conversation revolved around how I looked like her ex-boyfriend and that I was really cute. At one point, she starts to turn the conversation really sexual, like really aggressively sexual. She keeps talking about how she would like to be dicked down and none of the guys in here are man enough to do it. The whole entire time she's looking at me seductively while trying to turn the conversation into my sexual interests. I keep ignoring her until she gets seemingly annoyed with me and goes to a different section of the party. When Zane returned, we immediately left in order to get away from her for good. I thought that I had turned off Alexis for good, but it was only the beginning. It seemed like the more I rejected her, the more she tries to invade her space. Soon, she was always showing up at our events, texting me or trying to keep us from having alone time at parties. One day, Alexis had invited us to a party that she was throwing with a couple of friends. I didn't want to go as I hated her presence, but Zane suggested we go, telling me to just ignore her and have a good time. We went as a proud couple and kept Alexis at bay for most of the evening. At one point during the evening, we got separated, and I lost track of Zane for about 2 hours. When I finally found him, he was outside, sitting on a curb, crying. I tried to talk to him, but he brushed me off and went home without saying goodbye. The next few months, our relationship gradually went to hell. He started avoiding me at work. He stopped texting me, hanging out with me, and kept his distance. No more kisses, sex, and romance that made us such a strong couple. It got so bad that he didn't want to be in the same room with me. I didn't understand why he was acting this way. After all these years we spent together, he was treating me like he hated me. I slipped into a deep depression when he stopped talking to me. I failed a lot of my classes at college. I stopped eating and contemplated ending it all at some points. This was the first time I had been in love, and him ignoring me just completely destroyed me. I just wanted to kiss him, hang out, and do all the things we used to do before the issue came up. One day I got a text from him saying he wanted to talk face to face. This lifted my spirits as I thought we were finally going to go back to normal. We meet for dinner, but once again, we don't have much conversation. We spend most of the evening eyeing each other, unsure of what to say. I finally get the courage to ask him why he's been treating me this way. He admits that he cheated on me with Alexis. At the party, when we got separated, he told me he had a little bit too much to drink and ended up hanging out with her. When they were talking, Alexis brought up the subject of how his relationship with me made her uncomfortable. She told him that guys belong with girls, and told him that he was too handsome to be a queer. She spent the longest time filling his head with nonsense about how we'll never make it as a couple. At one point, he has drank so much that he starts to believe the nonsense, and the two eventually get to the point where they fucked. My heart shatters hearing the news. I am pissed that he cheated on me, but I try to keep my composure the best I could. Taking the high road, I try to move past the situation and suggest we get back together. He follows up with he's been thinking about our relationship more. He then starts to tell me how listening to Alexis' views on homosexuality made him question our relationship. He now starts to say that he wants to be just friends, quoting that relationships between two fags would never work out. At this point, I snap and punch him straight in the face before running away in tears. I could not believe he would just forsake our relationship all over one night of action and a few negative thoughts she put in his head. I go back home and stayed in my room and continue crying when my mom comes into my room. I tell her the news, and to my shock, she's happy that I was no longer doing sinful behavior. I ask what she meant by this. Then my mom tells me the truth. She knew of our relationship and sent Alexis to give us a push in the heterosexual direction. She hoped that her flirting with us would make us realize that we were just confused and not into one another. She says she did this to save our souls, as she and God would never accept two fags. I never forgave my mother for what she did and moved out 2 days later into a hotel until I could buy my own apartment. I tried to reconcile with Zane, but he was still convinced about what Alexis said and refused to see me. Eventually, we stopped contact altogether, and I moved far away from it all, 5 states to be exact. To this day, I still love him and haven't had a good relationship with anyone else since. I tried to let go and reconcile with my mother due to my brother's coming out, but her homophobic attitude and wanting me to date Alexis kept us from finding common ground. Eventually, I heard about Zane from a mutual friend. As it turned out, he's not doing so well either. In his attempts to become straight, he had been divorced twice and eventually turned to alcoholism. I contemplated reaching out to him to be his friend again, but I could not bring myself to do it. He still keeps a special place in my heart, and hopefully, I'll be able to find someone that makes me just as happy as him. The end. This is a subscriber-submitted story. Email us your stories to get featured. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.